My players just lost a battle against a Roomba. A little bit of background. To promote 3rd edition, or 3.5, Wizards of the Coast ran a worldwide Living Greyhawk campaign until the launch of 4th edition. The real world was split into regions, which were handed over to triads of regional coordinators. Each region produced around 8 modules per year to establish its own flavor and drive regional plot lines forward. Living Greyhawk is long dead, but there is an astonishing amount of modules out there. After I snagged a torrent with over 2 gigs of adventures, an old buddy of mine bugged me to DM a campaign by cherry-picking the best ones. Our table ended up at 8 players. Too much, I know, but it's hard to kick out in real-life friends. I've been pitting the party against slightly harder challenges than their level 3 average party level would normally require, as Living Greyhawk modules were designed for 4-man parties. Tonight, the 8-member party ventured into Mordenkainen's House of Chocolate. Mordenkainen's House of Chocolate is a module from the 2nd year of Living Greyhawk. It is set in the Switzerland-themed nation of Perrenland, which in real life was assigned to Australia. Since Living Greyhawk rules required you to physically travel to a region to play its modules, very few American players ever saw the splendor of this adventure. I know my brief synopsis won't do it justice, but I will try nonetheless. The party is tasked by the children of Schwarzenbruen to investigate the disappearance of Herr Mordenkainen, the proprietor of the fabled House of Chocolate. The children's concern is that a festival is coming up in a few days, and if the House of Chocolate remains closed, they will receive no free treats from Herr Mordenkainen this year. During their investigation, the party eventually realizes the locals aren't actually talking about the Mordenkainen, but rather the Archmage's former baker, Hans, who took the surname in honor of his employer. The House of Chocolate is well locked and magically warded, but the party eventually manages to locate a backup key, which Hans left with his brother-in-law. This is where the fun begins. You see, the key is obviously magical. It is 6 inches long, made out of gold, and carved with ornate runes. The ornate runes should be as obvious a clue as any that someone should detect its magic and perhaps figure out what spells or spell types may be tied to the key. And yet, the party wizard refuses. Apparently, he's prepared only a single detect magic, and he's saving it for marriage. For the house itself. That's funny. Now, you'd think that with 8 players, there would be someone else available to back the wizard up and do the detect magic plus spellcraft combo, right? Well, the bard didn't choose detect magic as one of his level 0 spells. The cleric has it memorized, but put 0 ranks in spellcraft. The druid is in the same position. The archer fighter has spellcraft ranks for occult slayer, but no access to the spell. The rest of the party consists of a rogue, a melee fighter, and a ranger, and no one pressures the wizard into using his level 0 spell. Fine, whatever, let's roll. The party decides to enter Mordenkainen's House of Chocolate through a side door in the backyard. Earlier, they noticed smoke rising out of a grate by the side of the building. They are so intent on heading to the basement first that they completely ignore the stairs upright in front of the entrance. When I point out all the windows are shuttered and locked, they just whip out their light sources and keep going. The wizard isn't going in the house, by the way. His cowardice is a bit of a running gag with the party. If there's combat to be had, you can bet the wizard is at least 2 rooms away. Normally, he gets scared of being alone after running away and runs back toward the party. This time, however, he's utterly convinced the door will shut once the last party member is inside, so he keeps standing just beyond the threshold even when no other party member is in sight. Meanwhile, the rest of the party slowly progresses through the house. The rogue has been armed with a house key and charged with discovering the way into the basement. He finds the stairs and follows them down, with the ranger only a step behind. The pair emerge into a vast basement, filled with a lot of chocolate-making equipment, and as the rogue turns a corner, he comes face to face with a golem. Do you remember the name of the module? That's right. In Mordenkainen's house of chocolate, even the Golem is made of chocolate. The rogue is shitting his pants hard enough for liftoff. Fortunately, he's also the one carrying the house key. He waves the key in front of the Golem and says something along the lines of, "Please don't kill me! I'm allowed to be here!" Then he waits for his chocolatey death. Except the Golem just stares at him. So the rogue stares back, still without a clue. But something is happening upstairs as well. A huge blob with the consistency of jello spills down the stairs from the second floor of the house and fills the entryway, stopping just short of the wizard, who's still outside the house. The wizard rolls knowledge dungeoneering, but he's way below the 10 plus HDDC. For all he knows, this is a massive ooze. The bard, hearing the shuffling coming down the stairs, walks back to the door from the family room into the entryway and finds it is completely full of solid green goo. Shouting, "Oh shit, we're all gonna die!" he runs back as far as he can. He does roll a massive bardic knowledge check, so I tell him he's heard strange tales of gelatinous cubes you can eat, and he sadly assumes I'm just pulling DM bullshit. Because, you see, all things are possible inside Mordenkainen's house of chocolate. For example, what appears to be a gelatinous cube to the untrained eye could actually be a gelatin cube. But no, the DM is out to get the players. That has to be the only explanation for a huge ooze in the middle of a house, even if the house's owner is a Mordenkainen. The melee fighter, a female dwarf, reacts to the bard's cries of "Run away!" by predictably moving towards the now blocked exit. She's got enough movement to get there and ask out loud what in the nine hells this thing is. Remember the spellcraft situation from before? Besides the wizard, no one in the party has knowledge dungeoneering. No, not even the ranger. All they know is they're screwed, but not how hard. Seeing the only way out is blocked by a mass of goo, the druid panics. She breaks out a flaming sphere and rolls it out into the entryway. The ooze isn't exactly dodging, so she manages to damage it. The party's spirits are raised.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
And all that. The ooze pours itself into the room and attempts to glomp the dwarf, who wisely decides to avoid it and makes her reflex save. The cleric, who is too enamored with the light of Lunia, and similar spells for his own good, casts his divine radiance. The wizard, still outside, predictably backs away from the entrance and goes invisible. Downstairs, the ranger decides to investigate the basement instead of heading up to check on the obvious sounds of combat. He moves around the Golem, expecting an attack of opportunity. The Golem doesn't take it. The ranger stares at the Golem. The Golem stares back. Meanwhile, the rogue runs up the stairs, sees the ooze, and decides to unlock a window, because the ooze is blocking the party's only exit point. The archer, who was backing up the ranger and the rogue downstairs, follows him up. The mage, still outside and now invisible, begins summoning a celestial badger. The druid moves the flaming sphere back into the ooze, which somehow decides to flow around it and dodges the fire. The cleric, conveniently forgetting that he's standing within attack of opportunity range, fires off his ranged touch attack, and gets smacked for about as much damage as he deals. The bard sings. The dwarf power attacks with a war axe, and does 0 damage. This is where panic sets in. The war axe is a magic weapon from an earlier adventure. It is the only magic weapon the party has access to, because neither the cleric nor the wizard memorized magic weapon, despite my insistence. It also deals slashing damage, to which the gelatin cube is immune. Finding this out the hard way, the dwarven fighter drops her war axe and pulls out a silver warhammer, her only backup weapon. It's the ooze's turn, and as it attempts to glomp her, she decides to take an attack of opportunity on it instead of getting out of the way. She swings the warhammer, power attack still in effect, and does 0 damage. Bludgeoning may be the only physical damage type the gelatin cube is not immune to, but it also has damage resistance 15 without magic. Now everyone is in "we're gonna die" mode. The rogue runs into a pantry the party investigated earlier and tries to gather as much oil as he can to light the ooze on fire. The archer decides to help, thinking she could dip her arrows in oil and hurt the ooze that way. The wizard's celestial badger pops in and charges the ooze, with predictable lack of success. The cleric drops the last charge of his celestial light into the ooze, but rolls like crap. The druid rolls the flaming sphere back into the ooze and singes it some. Realizing how bad things are getting, the ranger runs up the stairs. The bard gets over to the rogue and snatches out the house key, but the ooze is still in the room with things attacking it. It glomps the halfling druid and her riding dog companion. Both fail the reflex to avoid and the paralysis save. At which point, I remember the acid damage and add injury to insult. The bard has a plan though. See, the rogue mentioned the golem in the basement, so the bard figures he can just get down there, wave the key in front of it, and tell the golem to go fight the ooze. It will be perfect! And this is where I decide to throw him a bone, because they've been in this combat for almost 2 hours, and it's time to wrap up for the night. I ask the bard for a wisdom check, which he fortunately aces, and as he thinks his plan over, he realizes something. If one of the monsters within Mordenkainen's house of chocolate can be commanded using the house key, perhaps it would work on another. Seizing the key, the bard steps forward and commands the ooze to spill out its contents, which it does, to the party's relief. Now that they're not actively fighting it, party members also notice that the spaces the ooze moved through are remarkably clean, with no sign of their own dirty footprints. And as the gelatin cube wobbles in the corner, they raise their fists to the sky and cry out, "Did we just get beat down by a Roomba?" Hopefully you guys enjoyed this short 4chan story. If you did enjoy it, be sure to share the story with your DM and see if they can dredge up Mordenkainen's House of Chocolate to run with your own group. Living Greyhawk sounds like it was a great experience to play. Let me know in the comments below if you've played any Living Greyhawk games. That's gonna do it for today. And until next time, hope you feel inspired.